are the two players that absolutely no one in the world can question have had perfect or near perfect seasons, and i.e. deserve the excellent rating.
I think maybe there's an argument that he's reached like the highest peak out of all the players. I mean, individually, he's had an incredible season, and I mean, alongside Chingoto as well, with 14 or 13 finals in a row. The one that's like real clear for me is Yanguas. I mean, started off the season, I think, as the 10th seeded pair alongside Garrido, and finished the season third, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, absolutely incredible climb. He's won a major as well. Well, sorry, not a major. He won a P2, so he won a title. He kind of broke the streak finals of Coello, Tapia, and Chingalan. So,
given all the ingredients that he has, the fact that he's not even in the question for this season's best player or the race for the number one spot, I think in itself represents a failure for Juan Lebron. I mean,
hi everyone, and welcome to the Paddle Pod, your weekly podcast covering professional paddle, presented by Hugo and Gons. We're on to episode 80, and as always, joined by my co-host Hugo here today. Hugo, it's great to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, Gons. It's probably been the longest for a very long time that I haven't seen you in person. So yeah, it's pretty strange, to be honest. I mean, obviously, most of our viewers know, but we play paddle about 5 times a week together at the least. So we're quite used to seeing each other's faces for the good and the bad. And yeah, I've got to say, I've been missing you, mate. So happy to be back, and happy to be back talking about paddle, which is obviously one of our favorite things.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, missing you, but sometimes like those partnerships in paddle, maybe they spend so much time together that when they actually get some time off from each other, they're probably like, yeah, this is quite nice. But maybe now getting to the point where you're kind of missing the other person, you're like, yeah, I kind of just want to get back on court.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, for sure, I think that it's going to be good for us when we talk about on court. It's going to be good just to refresh our games, both individually and as a pair. I think when it's been a very long season and we've been playing so many hours, it almost gets a bit repetitive, right? And sometimes you get in your own head, maybe try too many things because you've been playing pretty much every day. Sorry. So yeah, but all in all, look forward to being back on court together, not next week, but the week after, right?
Yeah, exactly. And kind of want to take this moment as well to wish everyone, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. We are recording this after the date, but we didn't get a chance to say so previously. So yeah, just want to make sure that to all our audience, all our fans out there. I mean, I hope that you got many presents. I hope that you got, Ale Galan's new metal bone, which looks absolutely amazing. And maybe some of you are LeBron fans, so maybe you got, LeBron's new racket as well. So yeah, hopefully many paddle gifts.
Yeah, fingers crossed. As Gon said, Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy holidays. And I mean, I wouldn't say they've just started, but we've still got a lot of holidays left. At least I'm convincing myself of that. So yeah, guys, enjoy the New Year's, and really looking forward to this last episode because it's the last episode of 2024. It's been a hell of a journey. And well, we've seen a lot of growth in terms of engagement, in terms of followers. And to be honest, all we can say is thank you so much, because we wouldn't really be here. It wouldn't be worth it if we didn't see that, that you guys enjoy our episodes and our chats, even if it's to some extent, even if it's just some of the analysis. So yeah, thanks very much, guys. And here's to 2025.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, very excited for 2025 because we've got some really cool things lined up. So I'm sure it's everyone's going to enjoy it. And like Hugo was mentioning, thank you for everyone that's been kind of a part of our journey so far this year, and we're on to the next. But maybe now moving on to the actual episode itself. So yeah, the paddle season did end as well. Very sad times because now we won't get to watch any professional paddle until, I mean, the actual season will start, I think, the 10th of February because the calendar's already out. And we will speak about the calendar, but not in today's episode, because we do want to kind of talk about the finals, the last tournament, and kind of do a end of year review for the main players and the players that were part of the finals. But maybe starting with the finals themselves. So Huge surprise. We did have a new winners, Coki and John Sanz. I mean, what an epic final. They managed to beat Coello and Tapia. They managed to break the streak. And they beat them in an epic match that, three sets. So first set 3-6, then 7-5, 6-3. If I'm not mistaken, because now obviously the match is it's been a feels like it was a while ago. They
Yeah.
did save a match point or two, if I'm not
Two.
mistaken. Two
Two.
match points, yeah. So epic stuff from Koki and John, who just finished the season on a massive high, even though they did just recently confirm that they are splitting up. So, I mean, nonetheless, what a way to end and what a tournament from them. The match itself was excellent. And maybe, Hugo, if you would just want to go a bit into it, I'll leave you to it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go too much into the stats. I think we've bored our viewers with the stats a lot throughout the whole of the season. But hey, credit to Paddle Intelligence, because if it weren't for them, we wouldn't be able to talk about stats and the data and from a paddle perspective. So really enjoying it. And I hope 2025 brings even more data. And obviously feel free to touch on it yourself, Gons. But yeah, I mean, firstly, massive congrats to Coki and John. I think it's great for them and paddle in general that we had a different winner and a new pair that's won a tournament, and not just won a tournament that the favourites participated in. So Chingalan, well, obviously Coello and Tapia, and Lebron and Dineno, and even Stupa Yanguas. So all the big dogs were in it, and they managed to. Funnily enough, before the tournament started, I looked at the draws, and looking at Coki and John's bracket, I thought this is definitely the tournament was the hardest draw for them out of all 8 pairs, because obviously they had to face Yanguas Estupa in the opening match, and Yanguas Estupa had just beaten Chingalan twice in a row. And then, if I'm not mistaken, they were on Chingalan's side for the
Yeah.
semis. They didn't end up facing in, and we'll come on to that later. But yeah, imagine Stupa Yanguas, then Chingalan, then Coello and Tapia, projected draw. I mean, it couldn't have been worse for them, and they did it. So massive credit to them. I thought they played a really well. They were great throughout the whole week, and actually probably a good time to touch on the fact that it was an incredibly slow court. I mean, probably the slowest court all season up in Barcelona. And I really enjoyed it, because what it meant is that other pairs that perhaps are better in those conditions, players that are more workhorses and are slightly less powerful. I'm talking of the likes of Coki and John, but also Momo Gonzalez and Edu, who obviously had a great tournament. It's great to see that variety, and I really hope Premier Padel implements it even more looking at 2025's calendar, because we want to see all types of paddle. We don't just want to see 3, 4, rally long points. We also want to see really long rallies. And if it's going to help other players and other pairs against the top dogs and against the big dogs, then I think it's definitely a good thing for, the spectacle itself. Yeah, I mean, as I say, the final was sensational. It was definitely an epic. It feels like these finals at the end of the season always bring surprises. I mean, last year it was Paquito winning. Well, he hadn't won a tournament all season, and he continued his streak of winning tournaments every year for the last X number of years. In this last tournament alongside Chingoto, now we've got Coki and John. So, hey, great to see it. And what I would like to say is that I did kind of feel that Coello and Tapia, I wouldn't say they weren't up for it, but I really don't think they cared that much that they lost. I mean, they were 6-3, 5-4 up and serving, and they were 40-15 up in that deciding game, or what was going to be the decided game. Tapia went for 2 potentially questionable smashes. I mean, we were seeing that throughout the whole, not the week, but the few days that they played in Barcelona, smashes were not working. I mean, definitely under 50% success rate for pretty much every single player. And he went for 2 big smashes, probably not caring as much about what was going to happen. And I just felt that when Coki and John then managed to break there and won the second set, and then obviously ended up winning the match, I didn't see that Coello and Tapia were really that bothered. Now, I understand. I mean, they made every single final apart from one during this season. And they've been the best player in the world by far. But I just did think that perhaps they should have been a little bit more conservative in the way they played. They were probably a bit too aggressive, and they should have tried to change their game style a little bit because, I mean, I don't know whether you agree, Gons, but they were on an unbelievable streak once again in terms of number of wins in a row. If I'm not mistaken, it was something like 46 or 47. It's a shame that that's broken in the last match of the season. But hey, it's probably me just speaking as a fanboy. I do think that Coki and John had an unbelievable match, and I do think they deserved it. I just felt that Coello and Tapia were maybe a little bit less interested than they were throughout the rest of the season. I don't know what your thoughts are, Gons, on the final.
Yeah, it feels strange to kind of say that, but I totally get where you're coming from because, they had the streak going on. It was the last match, the last tournament, a tournament which they haven't won. So it's almost like surely there's a moment towards the end of the season that you're up for something when everything's decided is this, right? You kind of want to end in a really good note. In Spain, the whole family's probably there watching and tournament they haven't won and continue the streak. So I would have understood if maybe they lost somewhere down, kind of those stretches in November, December when potentially, things were kind of headed in the right direction. But like in this tournament, it definitely felt that way. And then you're up 40-15 too close off the game. But as you say, in a way, it also felt like are they just like throwing this away because so many attempted smashes, as you mentioned, and they clearly weren't working. Like at no point. I mean, there's maybe one or two where you're like, okay, no, that was a really nice smash, but it was just so clear. It was just such the wrong strategy, and you can clearly see it every time they were getting found out. They were trying to smash. So just strange that they kept going at it. But on the other side, I mean, massive congrats to John and Coki because it wasn't like I felt like they also needed to put a lot of their, propose a lot from a paddle perspective, and they couldn't just stay on the back foot. They kind of, it was as if like they were giving the chance to re-enter the match, let's say, and kind of make it equal with a one set all. But then they had to like, fully go into it and kind of bring the best version of themselves. And they did. I mean, I thought John in particular was absolutely outstanding, was able to generate so many winners. And yeah, I mean, when you get these conditions, these sort of players and pairs like Coki and John can be so dangerous. And kind of how you mentioned at the beginning, I loved the fact that it was a very slow court and you got to see a different type of paddle that kind of we've been used to most of the season. So I do hope that this tournament kind of shines a light on the tour and hopefully they're able to fit in more of these courts along the calendar. I'm not entirely sure if you would do it in like a whole kind of block of like, this kind of this part of the tour is like the slow court season and or you kind of do it on a more ad hoc sporadic basis where you add in here and there. But nonetheless, I really hope that we get to see more of these type of courts because you get just to see a different type of paddle, a bit more tactical, the points a bit more worked than what you normally see when you get Coello and Tapia just smashing about everything. And we also got to see a really good matches as well. I thought these conditions brought so obviously the semi-final, or sorry, not the semi-final, but the quarters, the kind of first round for the finals between Momo and Edu against Chingalan. I mean, that was an epic match. Coki and John's first match as well against Stupa and Yang was an absolutely amazing match as well. So I mean, this type of conditions I think really brings out some really interesting and nice matchups. So I loved the tournament itself in that regard.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think we've already spoken about it. I think it's really important for paddle to introduce probably seasons and maybe even different surfaces. And if they can't do surfaces, at least for now, whether it's due to, well, lack of availability in terms of how many courts that they can produce that, well, clay courts. Actually, I've seen it. I don't know whether you've seen it, Gons, but I've seen Waterhead playing on clay courts.
Yeah,
There's
in
a reel going
Argentina.
around
Yeah.
Instagram. Have you seen it?
Yeah, it's the APT. I think it's like kind of the professional Argentina Pro Paddle Tour, something like that, where they're playing now in. I think it's the first time that they're playing clay courts. I mean, it looks mad. I saw a video as well, not of us Budohead, but I think when they were building it, of some guy like maybe some working the construction or something, and he was behind the line. I mean, the ball just flew like it was nuts.
Yeah, I'm not sure I love clay because I almost feel like it's a bit dangerous with the whole slipping, given that there's glasses
Yeah,
all around the court. Obviously, in tennis, if you slip, you'll probably fall on the ground. But on a paddle court, you're most likely to be slipping near a wall. So I'm slightly, well, obviously the walls are made of glass, but still, I think it's quite dangerous. I think maybe cement and something more like a different kind of artificial grass would be interesting. But nonetheless, if surfaces and different surfaces aren't viable right now, for whatever reason it is, I think they should have seasons for fast courts, medium courts, and slow courts. And even if it's not 100% accurate, there should be some sort of trend, because I think that's just going to make the players play better, because they're going to be training in those conditions, or they're going to try to, and also so that ultimately will improve the matches and make it better for us and the fans. But secondly, it's also going to help other players who aren't as suited to super fast courts or quite fast courts, which is pretty much what we see week in, week out, to also, benefit and win matches and progress. So I think it is important, and fingers crossed we see it, as we've already said.
Yeah, 100%. And maybe now we can move on to the end of the year review. Now we've done this maybe in a slight different format to how we've done these kind of analysis or reviews in the past. I think this time we've essentially we're going to put players into four different categories and kind of rate their seasons based on if they had an excellent season, if they had a good season, if they've passed, or we think that they've passed the season, or if they've failed. Now, please do take into account that a lot of this is based on kind of expectations, a bit of on how they entered the 2024 season based on how they were in the 2023 season. So it's not necessarily because one player is in the excellent category means that we think they are a better player than maybe someone that we put in the pass or in the fail category, right? It's all kind of based on how we think that they should have probably done the season, and probably themselves, right? When they're thinking about how have I performed this season? Well, someone like LeBron, for example, probably had huge hopes and huge expectations of what he thought he would achieve, and maybe someone else didn't have that many expectations and they managed to surpass those. So just want to take that into account, because yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean we think one player is better than the other based on the categories that we put them in. So maybe Hugo, should we start with the top maybe?
Yeah, makes
And
sense. I mean, these are I think the easy ones, aren't they?
yeah, so maybe in the excellent category, I'll let you start, Hugo. Who would you put in that excellent bracket?
Well, should I just kick off with one name, or?
Please go ahead. I hope there's one more than one.
Okay, well, Tapia, without a doubt. I mean, I don't think anyone can question that. And obviously, Coello. I mean, we may as well. I think those are the two players that absolutely no one in the world can question have had perfect or near perfect seasons, and i.e. deserve the excellent rating. Do you want me to crack on with anyone else?
Yeah, maybe I'll just jump
Go
in
for it.
here. Obviously, as well, Coello and Tapia for me, excellent. I mean, just yeah, not even worth mentioning why.
Yeah, nice. So I would also put Galan and Chingotto, both of them individually in the excellent bracket. And for slightly different reasons. I think Galan, if we're looking at 2024 as a year, between January and June, July, he was the best player in the world. And I'd say comfortably. And I know he's dropped off a little bit towards the end of the season. But honestly, those first 6-7 months, I think, are maybe the highest level of paddle that I've seen a player play at. I was absolutely mesmerized by him. And I think the main reason why him and Chingotto have managed to challenge Coello and Tapia this season for the number one spot is because Galan has been able to produce 30 plus winners for so many weeks in a row and under 15 unforced errors just consistently. And he's made it look easy. And there's been moments when we've spoken about his performances and said, "Oh, I don't think Galan had a great match." And then you look at the stats and it's something like 31 winners, 13 unforced errors. So he's really changed, and he's just got a completely different bar to anyone else. he's obviously in that top, or we've agreed that he's in that top 3 players in the world alongside Coello and Tapia. So I think him without a doubt. And then from Chingoto's side, I never thought that he could reach this level, being totally honest. I've always loved him as a player. I thought he was a top 10 player in the world, a great forehand player, but he's just completely evolved into a competitive animal. And I mean, well, the stats are there. He's managed to challenge for the number 1 spot against Tapia and Coello. And I think he himself probably, well, he probably did have hopes regarding him being able to do that. I mean, if you don't believe in yourself, no one is going to. But yeah, as I say, I really did not expect him to reach this level of paddle. So for me, they've also had excellent seasons.
I think I agree with you there. I mean, Galan, from a individual perspective, I wonder if I'd love to get the kind of different contribution scores of all the matches. I don't have them top of my head, but I think maybe there's an argument that he's reached like the highest peak out of all the players. I mean, individually, he's had an incredible season, and I mean, alongside Chingoto as well, with 14 or 13 finals in a row, some incredible finals. I mean, Chingoto's never won as much as he's done this season, silverware wise, and fighting for the number 1 spot. You know, well into the season and giving Coello and Tapia like a really decent fight. So, which kind of made Coello bring a level as well that arguably we haven't seen from him. So, I mean, it's really remarkable how they've managed to take Coello and Tapia to the next level. So I think that they have had an excellent season as well. Now, saying this, they kind of have now, I mean, heading towards next year, they've kind of set the bar pretty high for themselves. And, if they if they do want to continue on this train, they're going to have an even better season, which, from what we've seen in the past 6 months, kind of have they already peaked or have they not? I mean, that's the question. But if you look at 2024, I mean, yeah, they've had an excellent season, both of them.
Yeah, I agree. And Gons, I don't want to steal all the ratings as the first one to be speaking. So anyone else that you have in the excellent category?
Yeah, I mean, I actually have quite a fair few players, and maybe maybe I should be a school teacher and everyone would love me, because I'm just giving out, I'm just giving out good grades to absolutely everyone here. But no, but I think the other one that's like real clear for me is Yanguas. I mean, started off the season, I think, as the 10th seeded pair alongside Garrido, and finished the season 3rd, if I'm not mistaken. So I mean, absolutely incredible climb. He's won a major as well. Well, sorry, not a major. He won a P2, so he won a title. He kind of broke the streak finals of Coello, Tapia, and Chingalan. So, beating Chingalan, which not many pairs have done this season. He's also he's reached the final of 2 majors, if I'm not mistaken. Had that epic match at the beginning of the season where they beat Lebron and Galan. So again, not many people have beaten Lebron and Galan, and he did it with Garrido and reached the finals. So reached the final of the Qatar major. If I'm not mistaken, reached the final of the Acapulco major in Mexico as well. So 2 out of 4 major finals. I mean, I think he's just had an incredible season. So for me, definitely excellent for Yanguas.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, he's this season's most improved player, at least in my eyes. He has become, again, at least in my eyes, one of the top 3 forehand players in the world. He's just the amount of winners that he can generate from the forehand position, how aggressive he's become. His smash is now a real weapon. His biboda will always be his best weapon, probably, but also his volleying has become really, really solid. The amount of por cuatro he generates. And then from a defensive standpoint, we've looked at the data. He's got a similar unforced error percentage to Chingoto, who is the king in that space. So it's truly remarkable. So yeah, unbelievable season for Mike. And I mean, I know we don't want to get into this today, but I think he's probably he's probably feeling like I'm the odd one out with this whole pair change situation. And he's probably not that happy regarding the way it's all evolved. So we'll see how he starts next season. But based on his current form, my word, he's really one to look out for.
100%. And then maybe to continue, because I do have other players in the
Ooh.
excellent bracket. So if I'm not gonna lie, I mean, I had a good thought about this. I just wasn't sure, but at the end of the day, I genuinely think that all the debutantes of the Masters final, I think you have to argue that they've had an excellent season. So that's Edu Alonso, that's Cardona, and that's Bergamini as well, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, it's the first time they make a Masters final. You have to be a top 16 player in the world. Obviously, it starts from the quarterfinal, so you basically have to, on average, be a quarterfinalist or better. And when I look at some of the players individually, Edu Alonso, where he started in 2023, Cardona as well, and kind of the rise that they've had this year, I think that when they look at themselves in the mirror, I think they have to be really proud of the season they've had. Like I said, I obviously don't think that they are better or on the same level as Coello and Tapia or any other players, maybe in the excellent bracket that we've put, but I do think that they've had an incredible season, so I would put them there.
Nice. I mean, I did have a think about this a lot as well. And I almost want to introduce an extra category that sits between excellent and good, which is like great. And if that
Maybe we can
was,
do.
I mean, if we did do that, then they'd probably be there, at least most of the names you've mentioned. Now, if I have to pick, and that's what we established when we started this, if I have to go for excellent or good, I'd agree that Berra, I'd go for excellent because I think, as you said, I mean, his start of the season with Victor Ruiz did not look encouraging, and he has managed to turn it around. He's made the finals more as a slightly older player, which is great to see. And just, I think the level that he's shown, I mean, that unbelievable match very recently alongside Garrido against Coello and Tapia, where it looked like they could even beat them, was remarkable. So I think he's probably at the peak of his career. And that means that he's had an excellent season. So I agree. Edu, again, I agree because no one expected him and Momo to do so well. And they've ended the season as, was it the sixth best pair in the world, if I'm not mistaken, points wise? I mean, they were just behind Coki and John, I think. I'm not sure. But I mean, yeah, I just think that their performance throughout recent weeks has been unreal. Their match against Chingalan in the finals was unreal. And I don't think they had the ingredients as a pair, him and Momo, to perform as well as they have done because they're lacking attack and they've managed to make it work. So, yeah, I mean, credit where credit's due. I think Edu individually, and as you said, coming from where he's come from, he was playing with Alex Arroyo not long ago and he looked like a very promising player, but he didn't generate that much from an attacking perspective to really make I'd say a decisive difference. Now he is making that difference also from a defensive standpoint because he's just a defensive machine. So yeah, also excellent. Now Cardona, for me, I'm going for good. As I say, they'd probably all sit in the great bracket, but Cardona, I think there's been a lot of hype around him. And I do think that he's delivered in the sense that, well, he's played very well for a lot of tournaments and he's made the Masters finals, as you said, for the first time. He's still very young. But I do think that throughout all the key moments, or most of the key moments during the key matches against the top pairs, he's been the one who's let the pair down. And maybe over the last few weeks, actually, he's been even better. So this could be a good indication for next season. But I just think all in all, I have a feeling that even himself or him and Paquito thought, hey, we could have caused an extra upset or two throughout the season as a pair. And I think the main reason why that hasn't happened is because Cardona hasn't just pushed it to that next level against the top pairs. But hey, that's just my opinion.
I mean, I think that that's fair. And yeah, I think these probably sit, if I were to rank the excellent bracket itself, they probably sit at the bottom. So yeah, maybe another great category would have been adequate to add. But I mean, I just think it makes it a bit more interesting that we have to segment into these four brackets. But I think you had some decent arguments there. I guess that's on my side. That's all the players that I would say had excellent seasons. Do you have any more additions, Hugo, or would you go on to good?
Well, I'm going to go on to good because that's what I decided. Now, I did have huge doubts with John and Coki, not going to lie. I just think the fact that they won these finals and they had the toughest draw in the world, the toughest possible draw, just could almost say, hey, they deserve to be ranked in the excellent category. And they also managed to win a tournament when obviously some
The
of the top
P2.
seeded pairs, yeah, P2, some of the big dogs, Coello and Tapia, Chingalan, weren't playing. But maybe I can just jump straight into it. I think they should be, given that we don't have a great category, they should sit in the good category because they probably had bigger expectations for them as a pair. And that's the reason why they've ended up splitting. At the end of the day, they won the finals. They said, hey, this might be a reason to reconsider. They've sat down and they probably thought, I don't know whether we've managed to challenge the big dogs enough. And I agree. I had a lot of hopes on them as a pair because they'd indicated those signs and they've always reached or pretty much always reached the quarterfinals and semifinals when they had to. They haven't had any huge upsets, but I don't think that they've excelled as per se. Obviously, they have in the finals, but I don't think they have in any other tournaments really. So that's why for both of them, I'm going for good. And if I had to choose, we've spoken about it a lot. I think Coki Nieto has been slightly better than John, way more consistent. He's added an extra level to his attacking game. So that would be kind of my rank between them. But yeah, those are my first two in the good category.
100% agree with you. Really hard for me as well. I mean, so close to have them in the excellent category. If we would have had a great one, they would have been there for sure. But they probably sit atop of the good category just because of obviously the final tournament. I mean, I guess that's a good way to think about it, right? It's like, okay, if this final tournament didn't happen, how would you rate their season? And I think you'd say good. So I guess by that, what I want to say is I don't want to let just one whole tournament influence kind of what they had, the whole season. Nonetheless, obviously, it was still a very impressive outing and an incredible win. But I just think that maybe for them to have an absolute excellent season, they kind of lacked that consistency in terms of challenging the very top, as you say, kind of maybe making an extra semi-final here and there. I mean, they were quite consistent in terms of, being in the quarterfinals and stuff, but they had a they never really caused any major issues against Coello and Tapia initially or against Chingalan when they had to face them. So they were kind of always out in the quarterfinals when they were kind of favorites to make a semi-final here and there. And for example, the P2s they did. So I definitely think that they've had a good two/great season. But yeah, I mean, I think in terms of excellent, just missing out, I would say. But I mean, still, I mean, they should be pretty happy with what they've done this year.
Agreed. And maybe moving on to the other big name that I think just misses out is Mr. Javier Garrido, because I think that him and Yanguas as a pair have been the revelation this season. I mean, they were sensational when they were playing together. They moved up from 9th or 10th seeded when they started off to fifth/4th, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, they were practically ranked 4th by the time they separated. And I think obviously Yanguas was a leader in that pair, but Garrido was honestly very, very impressive. I think that he's improved the mental side of his game a lot. And that was I'd say his biggest weakness, because from a shot per shot perspective, I mean, he is almost like the textbook paddle player. I mean, he's good at everything. And I know he struggles a bit more from a defensive standpoint, but if he has a defensive forehand player next to him, probably doesn't need it as much. So I think he should be very, very happy with his season. Now, I haven't gone for excellence for a few reasons. One of them may be slightly out of his hands, and one that I don't agree with. He didn't make the World Cup squad, which I think is probably out of his hands. I mean, Gons, if you and I had created the World Cup squads, I'm pretty sure that both you and I would have put him in our squad. So, hey, maybe that's slightly unfair. But I also think that just towards the end of the season, there's been a few moments where he's showed a few hints of the old Garrido, a bit of a mental weakness throughout some key matches. I even think that this finals first round match when they played Lebron and Dineno, Garrido almost felt like a bit defeated too early on. I didn't think he had the best attitude. So I don't know. I have a feeling that towards the end of the season, he's had a few little, I'd say, bumps in his form. And that's the reason why I've stuck with good.
Yeah, I mean, Garrido for me, probably classic textbook good. Uh, he had a great start of the season, made the major final in Qatar, beating Lebron and Galan and Los Super Pibes as well. With Yanguas, obviously created an incredible partnership. But then maybe from there on has just been a bit more kind of normal, a bit more stable, nothing incredible, let's say. He had that stretch with Alex Ruiz, which was obviously terrible. And again, maybe similar to what you said in terms of a bit out of his hands because Stupa called the Anguas and he was kind of left out there with no one. And there's this interview with Pablo from El Cuarto Set where he kind of opened up and said that he was probably still in shock and it was kind of like a really hard time when kind of he had to split with Yangwa. So probably not in the best state emotionally throughout that period, and kind of that was reflected in his game and alongside Alex Ruiz. I mean, they were a terrible pair. Thankfully, that ended quickly, and he managed to sort of ride the ship, steer the ship. With Beramini, who's a great find. I mean, as you say, Garrido's the classic left-handed, left-sided player. So alongside him, he just needs a classic right-sided player, more defensive, more able to construct the point. So Beramini's been absolutely incredible for that. So I would say Garrido for me has had a good season. Started off kind of established, but let's just say kind of still with some stuff to prove. And I think this season he's been he's made great progress. And hope next season as well with the person that he's looking to pair up with. I mean, he should be a really good one for him as well. I think if Dineno is at the level that we've kind of been accustomed to, then he should be able to challenge quite a bit. But maybe moving on, I do have another person that I would say is in the good category for me. I don't
think
know
it
if
may
you,
be the same one.
yeah, maybe probably. So Momo Gonzalez,
Yes.
for me, definitely another classic. I would say textbook good.
Yeah.
Nothing absolutely standing out from Momo, but just like so solid. And again, I mean, especially since he's been with Edu Alonso, they've been so good. They've been really, I wouldn't say challenging the very top, but they've had some matches where they love these 2-3 hour matches, and they've made it really tough for the opposition to. It's kind of one of those where you look at the draw and you see that you've got to play Momo and Edo, and you're thinking like, oh God, why are going to play these guys? It's going to be a 3-hour battle. So Momo individually, I thought he's had a pretty good season. I think he's improved from an offensive point of view, which is probably the area that he still needs to, that he still lacks, and he's still not able to finish the point as quickly as kind of the top backhand players. But I think he has improved offensively. I think his smash has gotten a bit better, and defensively, we just know that he's unbelievable. Returns every single ball, and he's an absolute workhorse. I mean, he'll run you out of the court. So I mean, I thought that he's had a pretty decent season.
Yeah, I mean, I just couldn't agree more. So I don't want to add too much else. But to be honest, I think the reason why I've edged him into the good category and not just stuck with him as a pass is because he made the finals, and also because of how well he's done alongside Edu when, as I said before, it didn't seem like the pair had the ingredients to do as well. It seemed like they were going to struggle to close points. And even though they have, and even though that 99% of their matches have lasted about 4 hours, they've still managed to get most of them through. So I think, hey, You just got to take your hat off and say you had a good season, mate.
Yeah, exactly. So probably is it, do we move on? Do you have anyone else in the good category?
No.
That's it for me.
Yeah, agreed.
So going into the pass, it's gonna be a really quick one for me because I only have one name.
Okay. Wow.
I don't know if it's different for you, but for me, it's Stupa. So I'm going to give Stupa a pass. I mean, he just made it, to be honest. If he didn't have the second half of the season that he's had, I think I would have very comfortably put him in the fail category. But I guess Stupa is also a bit of a victim of his own doing in terms of entering the season with super high expectations, because obviously he had an incredible 2023 season where, you know, him and Nineno challenged Coello and Tapia right till the very end and won so many tournaments. Faces of the season, they were the best, the best pair out there. So entered 2024 again with Nineno with very high expectations. Didn't really get going. You know, we saw their struggles throughout with trying to be a bit more aggressive, and they just never really reached that level that they had in the past. And then with Yanguas, started off kind of rocky, but then they were able to turn things around, and they ended up the season, you know, really really strong. And Stupa was kind of, I thought that he found his level back again, especially those tournaments where they made the final and beat Chingalan along the way. So I would say it's a pass for me. Also won the new Giza P2, so he did win a title. But yeah, I mean they, I guess in terms of, you know, how they or how he thought the season might have looked like, you know, when he started it, probably was not too happy about it, let's just say.
No, I agree. Still a pass for me. I just think that he's not performed to the level that we saw him perform at with the Neno throughout the whole season, pretty much. I mean, you could argue that maybe the last few tournaments when they beat Chingalan, when him and Yanguas beat Chingalan twice in a row, maybe he showed a similar level, but I still think it was lower. I mean, he was an absolute machine with the Neno not very long ago. And I mean, they even struggled, him and the Neno together, to beat the Deus brothers in the semi-final in the World Cup. I mean, they went to 3 sets, and obviously they got absolutely spanked by Coki, Nieto and Arturo Coello in that opening match. So, yeah, I just think Stupa has had a pass of a season. Maybe you could say that it's towards the top of that bracket, kind of looking over the good bracket, but not quite making it, rather than towards almost failed. But yeah, I very much agree with all your comments. So I don't want to develop that much longer. But I do have other players in the pass category myself. Maybe we can just go by them one by one, because if I'm not mistaken, we've got 3 players left. And given that we're going to, well, we may have different opinions, we can just talk about each one individually. So I'll kick off with Ineno, who is also a pass for me. Now, very similar arguments to Stupa. I just think that he hasn't performed to the level that he was performing with Stupa, and the level thanks to which he almost reached the number 1 spot and challenged Goyan Tapia for it. Now, I don't think he's failed. I don't think he has underperformed that much, because at the end of the day, he hasn't had any stinkers. You look at just him throughout the whole season, and I just don't think that he's had any massive stinkers. He's made the semi-finals pretty much throughout every week. Alongside LeBron, I mean, as a pair, they haven't managed to win a tournament. Well, they did, but not with the big dogs, which is obviously what I'm talking about specifically. But I don't think they've really had any massive upsets. I know they lost to Asburger and Chozas, but hey, they are machines from an attacking perspective, and it was a very fast court. So I just think that overall it'd be a bit harsh to go for a fail, but that's my opinion. I'm keen to hear your thoughts, Gons.
No, so I've given Dineno a fail with Stupa, just clearly underperformed, wasn't able to beat anyone. He's just not, either with Stupa or with LeBron, hasn't really beaten anyone that you would say like, okay, you know, you were the underdog that game, and you still managed to pull it through. Whereas I think with all the other kind of players we have maybe seen that this season, even if it's just one match. And the expectations for me, obviously, they were huge. I thought that with Stupa and how they finished the season. I mean, I didn't think that they were going to end number ones or anything like that, but I still think that they were going to be able to challenge, win tournaments here and there. So massive underperformance as well from an individual perspective. I mean, I think that both in his partnership with Subban, with LeBron. I mean, maybe especially with LeBron, I thought that he was kind of the worst player and kind of letting that pair down a bit. So I just don't think that, I wouldn't give him a pass. So for me, it's definitely a fail for Lineno.
Fair enough. And should we maybe move on to Paquito and leave the tastiest perhaps for last? So Gons,
Yes.
thoughts on Paquito? Clearly, from what you just indicated, you've failed him.
Yeah, so Paquito, I mean, I would say that Paquito in the fail category is definitely the one that I kind of thought about the most. I would say he sits between a fail and a pass. So I think mainly the fail is just his partnership with LeBron. There were just so much expectation around that partnership. And even the way he ended 2023, and he still made a couple of finals in the season in 2023. Obviously, won the last tournament in 2023 alongside Chingoto, and overall had a good season, I would say, in 2023. So I was expecting him to have a good season with Sanyo, and then all of a sudden the whole split with LeBron and Galan happens, and he's pairing up with LeBron. And there I was like, okay, we were even talking about could they challenge for the number one, and we thought that they had all the ingredients to do so. And that for me was just such an epic fail that I mean, I don't think that he warrants a pass. And then alongside Cardona, they just been kind of decent. They haven't really managed to to cause any upsets or anything like that. So I would say for me, when I think about Paquito and how good he is as a player and where he was coming from, and the fact that he hasn't won a single tournament this season, not even made a final or anything like that, and he's had the chance to play with LeBron for a significant amount of the season, I just have to say it's a fail for me.
I understand it. And to be fair, I was tempted. Now I've gone for a pass again. And I'll stick with the reason why I've gone for pass rather than failure. Although I do think that one of the reasons why his season has dropped down significantly is because of losing that deciding match in the World Cup final. I do think that that's a big upset for him. I mean, that must have really affected him, but I'm just talking when you look at his performances, that is probably his biggest red flag. I mean, he should have won that match alongside Yanguas,
That's
this
another one, yeah.
most improved player, and he didn't against two inexperienced players. So I know that can happen. It went down to the tiebreak in the deciding set, but hey, it's bad. Now I've stuck with pass because when I look with the partnership, well, I look at the partnership with LeBron. I actually think that LeBron was more at fault. I just think that I remember you and I just analyzing the data and looking at the data and talking about their partnership, and we were saying Paquito's pretty much, well, I'd say 80% of the matches, he's not at fault for the loss. He's performing, he's still producing a lot of winners, limited on forced errors. And I remember looking at one of the other big podcasts that I follow are our colleagues at Paddle Up, who obviously we had the chance to interview quite some time ago now. And for the first, I'd say, half of the season, he was actually, Paquito I'm talking about, right up there when looking at the data in terms of winners and forced errors, etc., like their own contribution score that they've come up with. So I was finding it really hard to not pass him at the very least. And hey, I mean, once again, he made the finals. He was the oldest player playing at the finals, which I think is quite a good stat as well. And another big reason is because of my rating for Cardona. I just don't think that Cardona has performed very well. And I think he's really struggled during the key moments of key matches against the top pairs, Tapia, Chingalan. Well, when they played against Stupa, when they played against Nieto, LeBron, obviously they've switched around pairs-wise. And I think the main reason that Paquito and Cardona have managed to, well, win some of the matches that they had to win but were quite tight. I'm talking about, say, the last 16 matches, quarterfinals, and also why they've actually not had massive kind of poundings against Coello and Tapia Chingalan is because of Paquito's consistency. I think Cardona has let him down a lot. So those are the reasons. But yes, it is a pass looking over the abysm or however you want to say it of failure.
Yeah, it's right there in that grey line. And maybe the last one, so last player, I think here it seems like we both agree. And well, it's none other than Lebron El Lobo. So we're both gone for fail. Is that correct, Hugo?
It is correct. It is correct.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't think as this is probably um in terms of, the same categories, Coello and Tapia, we knew that they were lock excellence. I think this was a clear failure when we talk about LeBron's season. Obviously, had huge expectations going into the season with starting with Galan, then that match against Garrido and Yanguas in the Qatar Major happened. So a lot of it caused on his side, which kind of caused the split. Then huge expectations again, pairing up with Paquito, and that didn't really seem to work out. And then takes a massive gamble to go to the backhand, and never really clicks as well with the Neno. Was not able to beat any kind of big players in terms of Coello and Tapia, or even Chingalan when he could face Galan on the backhand. So I'd say a pretty big and disappointing season for Lebron. And yeah, Hugo, maybe do you want to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you summarized it really well, but I'd say my main points are the fact that LeBron himself, when he's thinking about his season, is given how competitive he is and how ambitious he is, he's probably thinking, I failed. And mainly because we've spoken about this for a long time, for many hours. And his potential on a paddle court is almost endless. He can do anything. He can play on both sides. He can be aggressive. He can be defensive. He's one of the fittest players on tour. I think he's 30 now, but I mean, from a fitness perspective, he's right at the peak of his game. I mean, he doesn't even get tired throughout matches. You can see that. So given all the ingredients that he has, the fact that he's not even in the question for this season's best player or the race for the number one spot, I think in itself represents a failure for Juan Lebron. I mean, he was the number one player in the world for over 4 years, alongside both Paquito and Galan. Not many players can say they've been ranked the best player in the world alongside different players. And Juan Lebron is one of the few players that can say that. So, yeah, I just think he has so much paddle in his locker that the fact that he only won that first tournament with Galan and a P2 with the Neno, if I'm not mistaken, without Chingalan and Goyan Dabia, I don't think that's enough for him. He also lost the World Cup final, playing alongside Galan in the second match. So, yeah, he was the worst player in that match. I mean, I'd say by quite a far stretch. So, too many things for me. It's a shame. It's a fail. I wouldn't say it's a horrendous fail. I mean, he's had a few stinkers. He hasn't performed to the level that he expected, but he hasn't been absolutely awful. But yeah, it's a fail for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think like we said at the beginning, obviously he's he's won two titles this season, reached a ton of semifinals. So not necessarily that we think that LeBron's a worse player than Coki and John, for example, like clearly not. But when we look at their season, kind of what they were hoping to achieve, I think that LeBron has clearly failed this season. But he's got a very good chance to redeem himself in 2025, and I'm sure that he's eager to go at it because he's it's now being confirmed that him and Stupa are joining forces, and LeBron's going back to the right, which we both think that's his best position and where he probably feels most comfortable in his most natural position. So very much looking forward to seeing them, of course, and maybe in the next episode we can talk about all the new pairs, because basically a lot of them have already been confirmed. But yeah, I mean, the one I've included in this one has probably already been quite a long episode. So I do hope that everyone's enjoyed it, and please let us know in the comments who you would put into kind of the each bracket and in terms of how you think the pair season went. So that would be excellent, good, pass or fail. But yeah, thank you for everyone for listening and watching, and we'll catch you next time.
Cheers, guys. Have a great week and catch you soon.